Hey, hello everyone. We'll just open the doors, so we'll give it a couple of minutes for folk to flood in and then we'll get things going. I don't know about where you are today. Where I am in Shropshire, England, is having a mini heat wave. It's absolutely glorious here. How about you, Chris? What's it like where you are today?
Yeah, similar. I don't know what the temperature is, but it's got to be 20-ish, I suppose, or something.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been
it's
in the office
pushing
all
out
day,
there.
so um, I've got a beautiful blue sky, but I've got no sense of how warm it is out there.
Oh, get out later. It's
Yeah.
lovely. What about you, Katie? Where you are today?
Yeah, it's gorgeous out here. So I'm on the south coast, 10-15 minutes down the road from Brighton, just the other side of Worthing. And yeah, absolutely gorgeous sunshine. Whereabouts are you, Chris? I don't know where in the country you are. I know you're
Uh,
UK as well.
yeah, I am in Hitchin, which is a tiny little town in Hertfordshire.
Oh,
But I was
lovely.
actually in Brighton all weekend.
Oh, were you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Nice.
it was a nice weekend as well, wasn't
yeah.
it?
I was
Really,
at
really
the
fun.
South Downs Shooting Club all weekend.
Very good. Very
Mm.
nice. Yeah, it's been amazing. Do we think it's going to last until this weekend?
Yes, but I think
I think
Monday
it
is a bit
is.
cooler from what I've seen. So
Okay.
that's a shame with it being the bank holiday.
It is the bank holiday, but it's
Mm,
typical British bank holiday, isn't it? Rains
mm.
on bank holidays. We'll give it another moment just in case anyone else is going to join us live. Obviously, we have lots of people that enjoy watching it back afterwards or dialing in through the EX space afterwards. So we will see. A few more people dialing in.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think the sun might win folk over this afternoon, Katie, but
I think it will.
we shall we shall have, as you say, lots dialing in afterwards on catch up as we do these days.
Mm.
And as always, we will be hosting the recording on the EX space for people to watch back afterwards as well. So, yeah. So hopefully it's still sunny when and wherever people are watching it back.
We've got a few more flooding in here, Katie. So flooding may be too strong a word. We have a trickle of people today.
Hello, everybody who's just joining. We're just going to give it another moment and then we will get started. We've just been very typically British, actually, talking about the weather. So I don't know if you're all based in the UK today. If not, please do pop in where you're dialing in from. A lot of these calls are very international these days, but I think I recognise a few of the names. I think we've got definitely some UK people today. So hopefully you're all enjoying the sunshine like we are. Um,
Yeah, I should say we're making a lot of use of the chat these days. We've locked these sessions down a little bit, but we're still really keen on conversations. So please open up the chat, say hello wherever you're from, and please use that to capture your observations, thoughts, questions as we're going through the webinar today, and we'll come to that at the end.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lee. I think we should get going. Oh, hello from Leicestershire.
Not
Brilliant.
far
Thank
away
you,
from
Dorinda.
Shropshire. The Midlands
Oh,
massive here. That's good to hear. Right,
it's like a
let's
local.
in the interest of time, let's get going. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Lee Smith. I'm co-founder of the EX Space together with Emma Bridger. Emma unfortunately can't be with us this afternoon, but you've got me and Katie, my colleague, also from the EX Space, on the line. I'm guessing a lot of you will know what the EX Space is already as you're here, but if you're not already a member, please do sign up. It's completely free to join the EX Space now. We have great paid for options, professional membership and so on that give you access all areas pass. But you get an awful lot for free now. It takes seconds to sign up. And we even have, watch this space, in the next week or two, we will be launching our debut iOS app. So if you're used to interacting and viewing stuff on your commute on your iPhone or iPad, you'll be able to access everything we've got to offer on the EX Space via the EX Space dedicated app very, very soon. So that's super exciting. More of that soon. Um, Today we're going to be diving into one of, I think, a hugely important but also a very misunderstood topic, which is about creating a culture for innovation. Innovation isn't just about sticky notes and brainstorming sessions. It's about crucially creating the right conditions for new ideas to emerge, be tested, and as we'll see when we talk to Cris, to thrive. Here at the EX Space, of course, we are all about human-centered design. We're about employee involvement. We're about ideation and ideas. We're about experimentation. So this topic really plays to the core of what we're about when it comes to human-centered design. And I look forward to pulling out some of those parallels and themes as we talk through the session today. So I'm thrilled to be joined by our guest today, Cris Beswick. Cris is a globally recognized thought leader in innovation strategy, leadership and culture. He's had a fascinating career, starting out originally, Cris, you can expand on this in a moment, but as a product and industrial designer, then spent a decade as a successful entrepreneur and CEO at the helm of an award-winning design group. And today, co-founder of a boutique innovation and advisory firm called Outcome. You're a visiting professor at a number of leading business schools. And last but not least, author of a number of books, but in particular, the one we'll be focusing on for today's session, co-author of the book, Building a Culture of Innovation, which is all about offering a practical framework for embedding innovation into your organizational culture. And we'll be tapping in, Cris will be tapping into some of the insights and themes from that book this afternoon. Absolutely thrilled to have you with us this afternoon, Cris, and looking forward to your insights on this hugely important subject. So let's get stuck in. Cris, before we dive into the main content, can you just tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got into this?
Yeah, let me give you the really short one. So you're right, I spent, 10, 15 years about 10 years as a product and industrial designer. And I'm pretty much unemployable. So I learned that at a very early age. So I've only ever had one job, and that only lasted 18 months. And what you understand when you're in the design world, and you'll know this with sort of human-centered design and things like that, as a designer, we're always conscious of the opportunity to do more and make things better and create better solutions, and you can create a solution as a designer, and it's inherent. You create a solution and instantly you're thinking, oh, actually we could do better, we could do more. So you're sort of in this permanent state of there's always more to be done, there's always better things to be created. And I lasted 18 months in my first job because I just felt held back I felt the organization that I was working for could do so much more and had so much more potential, but didn't want to. And that was a leadership challenge. That was a leadership issue. And as such, I felt that I was then held back and I was being stifled, and there was so much more as a problem solver that I could do. So I foolishly quit, as you do when you're young, and then went home and thought, okay, this is great. How do I pay the rent at the end of the month? So, and that's how you start on, that's how I started my entrepreneurial journey. Several months later, I'd started my first company, which in reality was a glorified, I was a freelancer really, but that's how you start. And managed to exit that in about 2000, started my next company, and then the next company was the big one, which I exited in. I actually signed with the lawyers on September the 9th, 2008, and Lehman Brothers crashed on the 15th.
Oh, wow.
And then the next period is basically writing books, co-authoring books, and doing what I'm going to talk to people about now. So strategic advisor for the last sort of 15 years. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, looking forward to it. I mean, I think already that resonates with me. I've been in organizations where, we actually create a culture that stifles and suffocates innovation very often. So it'll be interesting as you get into this, Cris, to kind of contrast maybe some examples of where organizations have got it right and created a culture for innovation versus the common approach, which is to stifle and suffocate innovation.
Yeah.
You've got some slides to share, Chris. If you want to pop those up on the screen, and
Yeah.
let's get stuck in.
Let me do that, and then you guys tell me whether that fills the screen. That should all be good to go now.
That looks spot on.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to mute now. If we any questions, observations, reflections, folk, please just drop them into the chat, and we'll get to them at the opportune moment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So welcome everyone. If I'm conscious that you may frantically try and take notes of some of the stuff on the slides. Don't kill yourself trying to capture everything. Lee and Katie will share the slides. We've got a PDF we can send out. Obviously you guys, if you're members, can come back and re-listen, but the slides will go out. So everything you see today, we're going to share as a PDF. So yeah, listen, what Lee just said there about that stifled culture is the reason why we're having the conversation today. So I've got loads of stuff to share with you. It's a big subject, but not a complicated subject. And I think one of the reasons why we wrote the book is this one, so Building a Culture of Innovation. One of the reasons why we wrote the book was to provide a really practical, pragmatic guide or set of principles. Think of it as a skeleton, if you will, that anyone can take in an organization and then put their sort of their meat and their flesh on it in the context of their organization. But the underlying principles of how we embed innovation in an organization are all there in the book. That's sort of the skeleton framework. One thing to note is the book title is Building a Culture of Innovation. I don't believe that's what we do. But try having that conversation with your publisher when they've decided that that's the title of the book, right? What I actually think we do is I think we build cultures for innovation. And what I mean by that is I think innovation for me is an outcome. And innovation is the end result of lots and lots and lots of things that we do inside an organization. It's the end result of a great employee experience around innovation. It's the end result of a real clear strategy and lots of things. I'm going to share a model and what I call the innovation system with you later. It's the culmination of lots of things coming together so that at the end of all of those things, we do something in an organization, whether it's redesign of a process, whether it's a new product, a new experience, a new business model, whatever it is, we do something that is so demonstrably good that we can justifiably call it innovative. And one of the challenges with my world, with the world of innovation and the stuff that I do with companies around the world in pursuit of innovation is it's been really easy over the past 10, 15 years for companies to self-profess innovativeness. So innovation is on every strap, it's part of every strap line. It's in comms, it's in marketing, it's in every corporate strategy. It's really easy to label just stuff innovative. And I think what we've done is many organizations have devalued true innovation and a true culture where innovation can flourish. And I suppose I'm on a quest with the clients that I work with. I'm on a quest to sort of reverse engineer that and figure out how we really revalue innovation as a capability. So a little bit of context there. I shared some of these stats in the comms that the X Space pushed out to promote this session, and these are a couple of years old now, but the stats pretty much ring true every year that they come out. And I don't share these to paint a really negative picture of what organizations are doing, but I share these just to reinforce the fact that despite years and years and years and years of organizations trying to pursue innovation, we're still not there. We're still not there in terms of a really embedded capability in organizations, and therefore genuine ROI on innovation, and organizations being able to say, we know categorically that for every dollar we spend in the name of innovation, we get $4 back. Innovation is about driving results. It's about creating new solutions, about tackling problems, capitalizing on opportunities. And fundamentally, for innovation to be positioned in an organization like every other department, it's got to, at the very, very least, wash its face. And ideally, given the whole premise of innovation is about new thinking and about new ideas and about this promise of shaping the future, in reality, what most corporates really want is innovation to generate a return. So we've got stats like this from the big boys, PwC and McKinsey, big chunks of CEOs and leaders saying innovation's a top priority, yet really, really small percentages of the same executives, the same leaders and CEOs being happy with their organization's innovation performance. And then there's this mismatch between leaders and senior executives believing that they've created the right condition for innovation inside their organizations. And then this goes to the heart of, the X space, the employee's experience of innovation inside that organization. So what's it like for me on a day-to-day basis as someone who has ideas and who's creative and wants to contribute to the future of the organization and wants to solve some of the problems we know our customers have. My experience as an employee, is it positive or is it negative? And on the whole, what we find is most experiences from employees is more negative than positive. Doesn't mean that it's really, really terribly bad, but it's, in general, what we found through the research we've done is it's more negative than positive. And what I want to share with you today are a couple of frameworks, which are 2 or 3 things that I do inside organizations to help tackle some of these things, and ultimately, do what we said on the book. How do we build the right culture for innovation? And more importantly, as the title of this talk is, how do we make that stick? And the last chapter in the book is all around making it stick, as we call it. So yes, innovation and innovation capability is cultural. It obviously has a huge cultural component because fundamentally it's about people. It's about the people inside our organizations contributing and collaborating creatively to solve problems or capitalize on opportunities. But it's also about the people outside our organization, i.e. the people that we serve as organizations and the people that we're doing all of this stuff for. But there are many, many, many ingredients that innovation takes. And the downside is, in my experience, it only takes a few of those ingredients not to be there for innovation to really struggle and for people to really struggle to help what I call contribute to the innovation agenda. I'll explain a little bit more about what that means in a few minutes. But there's a few on the right here. So loss aversion is a big one. There's a huge amount of psychology that's more present when we want to innovate in organizations and be creative, because being creative and taking risk and challenging assumptions and all of the things that innovation requires are typically not things that are part of our day-to-day remit as employees. So we don't come to work as employees and say, an absolute core part of my role is taking lots and lots of risk. And an absolute core part of my role is challenging the status quo and challenging how I think the organization is led and proposing new ideas that might actually be, you know, anti the way the organization has done things for many, many years. That's not generally part of what most employees think their role is in an organization. But when we want to build innovation as a core capability, we've got to get over the barriers to that as leaders and figure out how we build an environment where everyone in the organization is happy enough, not necessarily comfortable, but happy enough doing things that are a little bit uncomfortable and challenging those things. And as leaders, that's our core role when we want to build a culture of innovation. So we have to tackle things like loss aversion and the psychology around, in general, human psychology being driven by our core innate, hardwired into our DNA desire not to fail versus wanting to win, which is the premise of loss aversion. There's mixed signals, you know. I always use this one, which is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but you know, we want innovation, we need creativity, we need new ideas, we want you to help us shape the future, but don't forget to hit your targets by 5 p.m. on a Friday. So mixed signals about what's really important to the organization and mixed signals about how important innovation is to the organization. So remember those slides, you know, a few slides ago. The majority of leaders and executives saying innovation is a top 3 strategic priority. Now, I've been into hundreds of organizations around the world where they've said it's been a top 3 priority for the past 3 or 4 years, Chris. But then when you look under the bonnet, the mixed signal is still there because the system that is still in play inside the organization is built around, this is what we do operationally, this is what we've done for years, and this is actually the underlying subconscious purpose of the organization is to continue delivering what we're delivering. So those mixed signals have to be tackled. I just mentioned the wrong system. Innovation has to become part of the organization's system. Where we see evidence, like really significant evidence of mixed signals, is in that system that people have to deliver against and have to operate inside the organization. And that system not really incorporating innovation. And I'm going to share a system overview with you in a minute. So we have to have a system, yes, that's designed for operationally what we have to do as organizations on a day-to-day basis. You know, that's the cash cow, that's what puts food on the table, that's what pays the bills. But we also have to have a system in tandem that allows us to figure out what's going to pay the bills tomorrow, what's going to put food on the table tomorrow, where does the organization need to shift to tomorrow, and that's what innovation is there to help us deliver. The frozen middle is the next bullet, and I have a really strong perspective on this. And again, I'll use another sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek way that I describe this, but this is genuinely something that I challenge CEOs and executive teams with. If I go into an organization and in the boardroom, the senior team says to me, Chris, we're trying to drive innovation, we've put all the things in place, but it just gets stuck in the middle, right? We've got, you know, there's a permafrost, there's the frozen middle, and we can't seem to get the performance out of that middle that's going to deliver us innovation. My first response is, if, you know, geographically, if you've pinned down the middle and you've labeled them frozen, so if that middle is frozen, who's the cold north wind? Where does the cold north wind blow from? Because there's no middle manager I've ever seen on the planet that I genuinely believe gets up for work in the morning and goes, do you know what? I'm going to be frozen today. I'm going to, on purpose, I'm going to be obstructive. I'm going to live up to the mantra of I am the permafrost. What happens is those managers in the middle layer of an organization, in my experience, gets frozen by 2 things. They get frozen by the bullet that's above. They get frozen by the wrong system, i.e., we want innovation and we want creativity. We want you to come up with new stuff, but operationally, you're actually motivated and you're incentivized, and the pressure from above is actually to deliver what we do today. So they get frozen by having to operate inside a system that asks for one thing, but actually incentivizes something different. And the reality is executive teams and leadership teams own that system. So the reality is in the boardroom, when I say, if the middle is frozen, where's the cold north wind blowing from? It's a rhetorical question because it's blowing from the leadership team. And then the final thing, you will all know about lack of psychological safety. And this goes to the heart of the kind of culture required for genuinely building innovation capability. Do I feel safe enough to challenge the organization? Do I feel confident enough that if I voice an opinion, that won't be ridiculed, or that won't, serve in some way negatively in terms of me, my position, what I call, is there a peer risk or a social risk in standing out? Remember back when we were all at school, no one wanted to be, the kid at the back of the room when the teacher said, right, who can answer the question? How many of you are genuinely confident going, yes, I'll answer that one, sir? Definitely not me. That's peer risk, right? Or social risk. And psychological safety is a super important component, but I've got a view on that as well, and I'm gonna share that with you. I've also got a view on Drucker, and Drucker famously said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think when he made that statement and he created that, what has now sort of become a really famous quote, he made that in a time when the world was way, way more linear and way, way more predictable. So I genuinely think he was right at the time. Company A versus Company B. Company A has a brilliant, brilliant strategy, but a really toxic culture. Is that culture going to deliver on that strategy and implement it? No. But Company B has an average strategy, but a phenomenal culture. That culture will absolutely deliver that strategy. And even if that strategy is only 50% as good as Company A's, 100% delivery of a 50% strategy is better than zero delivery of a phenomenal strategy. So I think he was right. The challenges and the work that I do is based around a new take on culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what I believe and what I see in the organizations that I help is strategy, leadership, and culture need to eat breakfast together. The harmony that needs to be created between those three things is the key to driving growth, and it's the key to building a culture of innovation. And what I'm going to share with you are a couple of things that we implement inside organizations and show senior teams how to view the world and how to view innovation, which massively shift the needle on their innovation capability. And it also shifts the needle on the fundamental reason why we're here, which is to talk about what's the employee experience like. So I won't go through this verbatim because you guys can delve into this. You can dive into it at your leisure when you take the slides back. And I encourage you to have conversations with people in your team and with your directors and whoever about the things that I'm going to share. But really briefly, in my experience, 90% of the organizations I've ever worked with believe and think that they are innovating in a really deep, meaningful way. But in reality, when you unpack it, they're stuck on the left-hand side of this scale. They're stuck in reality doing incremental innovation, or, in corporate parlance, continuous improvement. And what does that mean? That basically means predominantly internal problems or opportunities, small scale, low to no cost, low to no risk, but happening all over the organization every day. So continuous by default, that's why we call it continuous improvement. So continuous innovation, small scale, very, very low impact. Most of the organizations I get pulled into, and most of the CEOs that ask me to go and speak to them, ask me because for the past 10 years, they've gone down the rabbit hole, which is the right-hand side of this scale. And what they've done is they've heard Harvard professors and other consultants and other thought leaders and gurus chant the following: you must be radical or disruptive or you will die. And the challenge with that is the right-hand side of the scale is needle in a haystack. The organizations that genuinely do something genuinely radical and disruptive are so few and far between that pursuing a strategy that says we're going to be radical and we're going to disrupt our market or our sector, if you're incredibly lucky, you'll come up with one thing a decade. But for 99.9% of organizations on the planet, that's not a space that they can operate in. What it actually translates to for many organizations is M&A activity or huge investment in tech or software or something that genuinely radically changes the operating model or the way that the organization operates. The challenge with that is, if you look on the left-hand side, almost everyone in the organization can contribute to continuous improvement or incremental innovation. But almost every organization's already doing it. So doing more of it won't shift culture. On the right-hand side, if an organization's doing something genuinely radical or disruptive, it's likely that the decision to do that, whatever it is, has been made by 5 or 6 people at the top of the organization because the cost is huge, the scale is huge, and the risk is huge. So you don't change culture there. And the sweet spot, the fruitful middle ground, which is where all of the work that I get asked to do for organizations focuses, that's the bit that what I've seen most organizations miss. So the focus here is, how do we really understand the customer way, way better than our competitors? How do we solve problems and capitalize on opportunities that benefit us, but also benefit our customers? And how do we choose those ideas or opportunities that are of a medium scale and a medium risk? Therefore, the cost is justifiable because we can quantify and we can take really educated guesses on what the payoff of solving that problem might be. And the capability that you want to really build is to do that. So think of this in venture capital terms. You can either try and go for the right-hand side and find a unicorn, $1 billion idea. And you may find one a decade, maybe, if you're lucky. And for the majority of companies, they don't even find that. Or you build the capability to build 10, $100 million ideas every year. Year in, year out, repeatable in perpetuity. Every year you build that as a capability. Now, if I was a betting man, I'd choose building that sustainable, repeatable capability versus hoping that we search and find something that's worth $1 billion. The beauty about the middle ground is that's where you build culture. Because now what we're talking about is creativity, human centricity, multiple teams working on different ideas and different problems, getting really, really close to our customers and really understanding them. Collaboration, creativity, governance, risk, psychological safety, all of the things that we were talking about earlier, you need all of those in the middle ground. And that's the bit that shifts culture, and that's the bit that shifts the needle on organizational growth. So Have a think about where your organizations are playing at the minute and what your focus is. And your challenge is, are we spending enough time and are we playing in the middle ground? Does our innovation strategy set us up to absolutely smash the middle ground? Or is our innovation strategy too heavily purely built around incremental innovation, and we're actually just falsely, falsely telling ourselves that we're playing in the middle ground? It's a really important question for leaders. The system that I referred to earlier is now really, really important. So now you've made a decision to play in that middle ground, right? Multiple teams of probably 3 people, no more than that, 3, 4, 5 people max, looking at solving really significant problems. So stuff that if you solve it, it will shift the needle. It's either going to shift the needle significantly enough for you to register that shift, right? Think about this as a volcanic eruption. There's a tiny little tremor, right? And you might just feel something, or the shelves are shaking and things are falling off, right? That's where we want to be. We want that seismic activity to register in the organization so that people say, wow, that thing we solved, that really made a difference. We felt that. Our customers felt it. It hit the bottom line or the top line. There's a demonstrable impact from that thing that we just solved. And now we can genuinely label that innovation. So there's 5 things that you absolutely need. You need a really, really clear strategy that shows the organization why innovation is important, what type of innovation is important, and how contributing to it is going to help contribute to the core corporate strategy. The second thing that you need is the right processes and tools. And there's 2 things here. There's how do we innovate? How do we solve problems? How do we unpack data? How do we, how do we validate assumptions? And whether we want to use design thinking or human-centered design or outcome-driven design, whatever tools and frameworks we want to use, that's a decision your organization needs to make. But let's say you go with design thinking or something like that. The second part to that is, what tools and governance do we use to make better decisions? So how do we decide what ideas to spin a team up around? How do we decide which ideas to back? How do we decide whether we should continue investing in ideas or whether we should kill them? So how do we implement fail fast, fail cheap? We need a governance framework around that. And then I'm going to talk about the bottom ones because the middle one is super important. How do we as leaders and as an executive team lead for innovation on a day-to-day basis? And I'm being really clear about the language I use in the same way as I reference the book. We don't build a culture of innovation, we build cultures for innovation. And we're not innovation leaders. It's about leading for innovation. So when we position innovation as an outcome, not a thing that we have or do, innovation is an outcome that hopefully someone labels what we do innovative, and that's what we're leading for. So how do we lead for that kind of outcome? What culture do we need? What are the values, the behaviors, the mindsets, the rituals, the habits that allow us to repeatedly operate in that middle ground? And there's 2 things that we need to understand. Culture follows process. So when we know the processes and the tools and the frameworks and the approaches that we need in order to drive innovation and solve those problems and capitalize on opportunities, we then understand the kind of culture that we need to do that. So if those are the tools and the practices and the things that we need, what behavior and what mindset do we need to repeatedly do that on a day-to-day basis? And then as leaders, how do we own strategy and how do we continue to reinforce strategy? And the reason why I have a big box in the middle goes back to that permafrost thing that I spoke about in the middle. All of my experience for the past 15 years of doing this with some of the biggest companies in the world is the false narratives around, is innovation top down or is innovation bottom up, they're both false. Every ounce of experience I've had in this space shows me that you build a culture for innovation from the middle out. And how we empower and enable the middle of the organization to bring innovation alive. So all those things, the tools, the mindset, the frameworks, the habits, the rituals, all of that, how we bring that alive in the middle of the organization, everything I've seen shows me that how we do that is key to whether or not we will build a culture for innovation or not. It's key to how successful that will be. The middle of your organizations are what I call corporately bilingual. They're able to have relationships upwards and downwards. They're able to influence upwards and downwards. They're able to create drive and passion and urgency and all of that downwards, and they're able to do that upwards. They're uniquely placed in the organization to take the strategic narrative and direction from the senior team, translate that into behavior that's needed on a day-to-day basis, and then if they're really, really good, bring that alive, because those managers are actually phenomenal future leaders. And everyone below them, all those non-managerial employees, will say, I'm in, I'm following. In my experience, most people follow the management layer more than they follow the executive layer. So what's the experience in your organization for that middle layer? Because in reality, operational pressure for the day-to-day and pressure to drive innovation and be creative and solve problems also sits in that middle layer. So what we've got to think about is what's the experience for that middle layer if we really want to build a culture of innovation. That doesn't exclude everyone underneath that middle layer, but the middle layer is super, super important. This came out, this is where, you know, as a thought leader and an author and all of the sort of labels that get thrown at me, this, when you build frameworks and you build different approaches and different models that you put out there for people to follow, this is a great example of when you wake up one morning and you go, I've been talking about this for 10 years and I've just had validation. This was a piece of research that came out at the start of the year, and it basically unpacks the top 10 or so things that all the research around the world has shown are the things that absolutely make innovation a core sticky capability inside organizations. And look at the top 5, the most significant: leadership, strategy, culture and engagement, and sufficient resources. That, in essence, is the model that I showed you before. Strategy and leadership clarity, strong leadership and direction from above, the right tools, frameworks, governance, resources, and a culture driven by that management layer that is absolutely encouraged and empowered to solve problems and be creative. And those are, I mean, you know, I don't discount the ones below, but look at the numbers: 66%, 52, 39, 28, 26. Those top 5 things, that is that model, those 5 things that I shared with you a minute ago. I'm going to share this with you now. And then I've got one more slide, which is sort of my gift and my challenge to you to go back into your organizations and have wider conversations. When we talk about psychological safety, for example, when I've seen psychological safety tackled in organizations, I've typically seen a generic approach to what psychological safety is and how it manifests in an organization. And I've seen that push through the organization. And the challenge with that is, in every instance that I've seen that, it's failed. Because where innovation comes into play, you have to understand the context, the different context as we push through the layers in an organization. What psychological safety means to the top of this, and I use the pyramid not because I want us all to maintain the traditional shape of an organization, but because it's just an easy diagram to get this point across. What psychological safety means in the context of innovation, and think of all of the challenge and the creativity and the risk and all of that you need in order to drive innovation in an organization. What psychological safety means to leaders is fundamentally different to what psychological safety means to managers in the middle of an organization. And it's fundamentally different again to what that means for everyone else in the organization. And what we have to do when we're looking at building a culture for innovation is understand the different way that we approach and enable psychological safety in the different layers that we have in our organization. Whether you've got 3 layers, 5, 7, there will be different context to what makes people feel safe to challenge and be creative and suggest things. The mindset that people need at different levels of an organization is different again. And what physically needs to be in place for innovation to thrive at different layers of an organization is different again. So think about those 3 contexts in the frame, in the context of building a culture for innovation. Think about these 3 things. This framework's called ODC, Own, Drive, Contribute. Inside your organization, what do the leaders of your organization need to do in order to genuinely, demonstrably, and evidently, like without question, own the innovation agenda? And I mean complete ownership. What physically do they need to put in place? Whether that's strategy, whether it's funding, whether it's governance, whether it's physical space, whatever it is, what do they need to make sure that without question, if innovation is deemed of strategic importance, what does that senior team have to take absolute ownership of to make that happen? What mindset do they need? What skills and capabilities and behaviors do they need at that level? And then what does psychological safety mean for them at their level? And then the same thing with managers. And what we talk about with that middle layer when we talk about building the right culture for innovation is in the middle of an organization, if that's where I operate, how do I drive the innovation agenda across this organization? And what does driving that agenda on a day-to-day basis look and feel like? What do I physically need in place to enable me to bring innovation alive on a day-to-day basis? What mindset, skills and capabilities and behaviors do I need in the middle of the organization to enable me to do that on a day-to-day basis? And what does psychological safety mean for me? How safe do I need to feel? And how safe do I need to feel those below me in order to bring innovation alive on a day-to-day basis? And then the final one tackles another false narrative. Innovation is everyone's job. The amount of organizations I've been into where I've heard innovation is everyone's job is just crazy. The reality is, think about that in the context of annual appraisals, performance management. Think about sitting every employee down. If that's the mantra that permeates through your organization, think about sitting every employee down and saying, okay, can you demonstrate now we're doing your annual review. Can you demonstrate how you've been innovative this year? 99.9% of employees would be able to say, well, I haven't done anything innovative. I can't put my name on that innovative thing. So language is really, really key in the whole way that people experience innovation in an organization and how we get them to deliver against the innovation agenda. What every employee can do is answer that question by saying, here's how I've contributed to the innovation agenda this year. Joanne on my team has spent the past 4 months on an idea team developing a new solution. And 4 hours a week, I've backfilled some of her work. That's contributing to the innovation agenda. That's quantifiable, it's measurable, we can document it, we can evidence it. How people contribute to the innovation agenda is the thing that you need to focus on, not trying to make everyone live up to innovation is everyone's job. So the final thing I'm going to leave you with is this. In order to close that capability and culture gap, as a leader, and the leaders in your organizations need to think about this. You need to start thinking of innovation as an outcome. It's the end result of lots and lots and lots of things that you do as an organization. And if that's the end result that we want as a leader, how do we as leaders own the entire ecosystem that is designed solely for people in our organization to pursue that outcome? If innovation is the outcome we want, how do we own the entire ecosystem designed specifically around enabling people to be innovative? And there's some stuff on the right hand side there. There's some core principles. I won't read them out, but understand culture, connect strategy and behavior, make everything contextual. Innovation is everyone's job's a false narrative. HR, there's a whole chapter purely for HR teams in the book, a whole chapter on how we make this stuff stick and how we build it into the fabric of our organizations. And then the final thing is, if you're not doing this already, you build culture by doing and showing people and demonstrating it works and getting people involved and telling stories about successes and failures so that you can celebrate stuff that works, but you can also show people that getting things wrong is just as an important part of the innovation journey as solving problems. So dive into that. Everyone can have the slides. I hope that's been useful. In such a short amount of time, I just wanted to throw loads of stuff at you. But yeah, I think we've got some time for questions.
We're good.
Yeah,
Chris,
reach out. You'll get all those things. Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. So Chris's details on the screen. Slides will be shared after the session and also made available on the EX Space.
Yes.
We've got about 7 or 8 minutes. I don't want to hog the questions, but I'll go first. So much rich stuff in here, Chris, and so much that really resonates with me. 2 things I think leap out. One is the kind of middle manager piece, the permafrost layer. You know, we face exactly the same issue from a communication perspective, from an engagement and EX perspective. You know, that's where the rubber hits the road, where it makes or breaks much of organizational life. So that resonated. And the other piece is around failure, embracing failure, and which I sort of couple together with psychological safety. I know Amy Edmondson, she's a Harvard professor. She's written extensively on psychological safety. Also published a great book called The Fearless Organization, which is about exactly that, embracing failure. So if we sort of join those 2 themes together, you know, interested in your thoughts on the sort of crunchy day-to-day behaviors that middle managers can demonstrate, live and breathe, that actually do that allow failure to happen, and almost, I don't know whether we ever go as far as celebrating failure, but certainly embracing it. Just interested in your thoughts on the behavioral aspects of that and psychological safety, and specifically what managers can do.
So without question, the best way that managers or leaders can tackle this is sharing personal stories of failure. Because you do 2 things. 1, you go, okay, well, it's acceptable. 2, because we're talking about it, and I'm now hearing a story of someone that maybe historically, or my view of that layer is, they don't want failure, they don't want anything going wrong. Our entire organization is designed, and our culture is designed to mitigate risk. I'm now hearing a story from the powers that be, that actually they've got things wrong and it was okay. As long as you caveat the I got this wrong with, and here's what I now learned about that thing. So you have to turn failure or risk into what I call learning episode. So it's okay to fail or to get something wrong, as long as you then codify what you learn through that process. Because the caveat to that is what we're looking for with innovation is something very specific. We're looking for what I call smart risk, right? Not cavalier risk. And cavalier risk is I've got an idea, I'm super biased, I think it's going to work, and sod it, I'm just going to try it, right? That's not what we want. We're not breeding that when we want to build a culture for innovation. What we're breeding is we think this will work. Let's now test that hypothesis, right? What are all our assumptions about the problem and the solution that we think might solve it? And if we can mitigate all of those assumptions and get someone else to validate them, then go for it. But if we can't mitigate those assumptions, then we've got to go out and learn a bit more and maybe do a little bit of a test, or just figure out something a little bit more about those assumptions to validate or invalidate them before we take some risk and try something with a customer or change a price or whatever it is that we're trying to do as an organization. So we're looking for smart risk, not cavalier risk. And stories of smart risk inevitably mean, even if it goes wrong, you will have learned something because you will have validated or invalidated an assumption. And the more managers and leaders can share examples of that, you then humanize and normalize what people think risk is and how the organization will deal with that.
Nice. Yeah, like that really resonates with me. I think, you know, you've underlined, as an internal communicator, I've heard lots of references to communication, the mixed signals piece as a blocker, but also their storytelling and the importance of that kind of bringing emotions out in a real human story.
Yeah.
Yeah, powerful stuff.
When we run, if we run acceleration programs in clients, so we might build a whole strategy and, you know, we'll put the governance structure together, we'll coach all the leadership team, and then sometimes we'll say, right, let's pick 2 or 3 teams with ideas or problems that are relevant to the organization now, and let's just go and spend 4 or 5 months trying to solve them. Utopia is you always want to deliver to the client solutions to all those problems. But for me, bear in mind, an organization that I've gone into to do that is then going through or at the start of that journey. Absolute utopia for me is that we kill an idea, right? That 2 months in, we go, we're going to can it, because we've done 2 things now. We've failed fast, we've failed cheap. We've saved the business another 50, 100,000 quid, right? Because we've not spent time on something that actually we've now found evidence that isn't going to work. But we've also shown the organization in doing that it's okay to kill an idea. And the whole system that you build to pursue innovation is actually designed to kill ideas, meaning that if an idea survives, then it's of value. And the challenge is most leadership teams don't understand the innovation system, the innovation process, how ideas are developed, all the governance behind it, and that innovation itself, the whole approach to innovation is about risk mitigation. It's designed to kill ideas and stop wasting time and money on them as fast as possible.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Yes, you mentioned earlier design thinking, and obviously that's something that's very much at the heart of what we're about at the EX space. So if anyone on the call is interested, we've got a wealth of resources and some incredible masterclasses. Our EX Designer masterclass in particular really delves into the mechanics of design thinking and how you kind of go through this process of experimentation, ideation, scoping things out at the outset to make sure that what you get is the right kind of output. Please embrace that, because that really plays to what Cris is talking about here.
Yeah.
We're coming up to the hour, so we're going to wrap things up there. Cris, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Powerful stuff. Really helpful, practical advice, and really focused on, you know, stuff that we're super passionate about as well. So thank you so much for that today.
My pleasure.
We've got a couple more, just a commercial break, couple of other webinars coming up for your diaries. 7th of May, we got Tamar Cohen on the emotional engine behind experience design. So nice follow on to what Cris has talked about here today, delving into emotions. And then we're back again on the 15th of May with our 2025 benchmarking report, looking at how we're currently measuring EX and engagement, and in particular how we're going wrong and why we need to approach measurement in a whole other way. So that'll be a fascinating one. You'll get a copy of the benchmarking report if you rock up to that as well. So the 7th and the 15th of May. Let's wrap it up there. Cris, thank you. Really appreciate your time and energy and insights today. And for all of you that dialed in live and left the sunshine behind you, we really appreciate your input today. Thanks again. And until next time, take care.
Thanks so much. Thanks,
Bye, guys.
Bye.